I knew that these people that were all at the border, I knew that they could not have all taken a boat or swam to Mexico in order to get into America from Haiti. It just didn't make sense. I mean, as an American, I'm not allowed, nor am I supposed to or required to know geography. It's one of the deals of being an American. We don't have to know anything about the rest of the planet. But like I admit, I have seen a map. Haiti's kind of far away, and there's a lot of water between Haiti and Mexico. It just doesn't seem like the logical way to go to America. So I always had some questions, and now we have our answer. Thank you, Daily Mail and Todd Bensman from the Center for Immigration Studies. They've been hanging out down in Chile and Brazil, and they were like, hey, Joe Biden just got elected. Let's head north. That's what they've been saying. That's what they've been telling people who will actually ask and then report on it. They got to Mexico, and then they got stopped because the Biden administration told Mexico, hey, do us a favor. Don't let the people from Haiti that are all coming in, don't let them in. And so Mexico was just like, okay, fine, but slight problem. The Haitians are not cool with this. Right? They were not cool with this arrangement. They're getting set up in these refugee camps, and they're like, well, wait a minute. I had a pretty good job back in Chile and Brazil. I was doing okay back there, and now, I came here to go to America. One of the guys interviewed said, Chile was 1,000 times better than Haiti, but America's 1,000,000 times better than Haiti, and so that's why they're trying to get to America, which I understand, by the way. I totally understand this. If I was living in an impoverished country as well, I think it's a logical decision to try to make it to America, especially if they're not going to protect their borders, right? So, for real. So, and by the way, this idea, the guy that sent out the original horse picture tweet, saying that, oh no, this is about, Haitians not being able to claim asylum. Why are they claiming asylum? Asylum is for people who are going to get put to death for political reasons or something. Haiti's, it's very poor. But am I to believe that these people require asylum? They've been in Chile. They've been in Brazil. There's hundreds of thousands of folks who have gone to Central American countries. And so what? We're going to take all of them in on asylum cases? Why? Is the Haitian government trying to kill them? Trying to murder them all or something? So on Sunday, September 12th, though, while everybody was fixated on the complete Charlie Foxtrot of the operation in Afghanistan, Mexico suddenly decided, hey, you know what, Haitians, you're free to go. That's what prompted all this. Mexican authorities said, we're not going to keep you guys contained in these little areas anymore, so you're free to go. So what did the Haitians do? They made their way to the U.S., right? Del Rio was the destination of choice. Why? Why Del Rio? Why this spot under that bridge, right? See, that's what I mean. I like to ask the question of why. How did this happen? Why did it happen, right? So the reason why they ended up in Del Rio, get this, the cartel, Los Zetos, the cartel was not charging them to cross at that point. And when you think about it, if the cartels are running their smuggling operation, their people smuggling operations, which are completely inhumane and barbaric, and this is one of the things that open border people are never asked to account for, this kind of this entire criminal black market of human smuggling and the like, which is part and parcel with the policies that you guys are advancing. But and by the way, when I say open border people, I don't even mean like libertarians, capital L libertarian open border people, because they're just they don't think there should be any kind of really border control to speak of. I'm talking about people who are we want to let illegal immigration continue, but we want to pretend like we don't. And so they're actually they're like secret open border people. Those folks. The human cost of these policies is never accounted for. Is never the folks who espouse these policy positions. They're never called to task for the damage that they do. Anyway, I digress. The Los Zetos cartel, they charge round about 10 grand to smuggle you into America on all these different points along the border. Except for apparently in Del Rio. I don't know why. There they were allowed to cross for free. This is the local branch of the Los Zetos cartel allows them to cross for free at that point. In most Mexican frontier towns, it's like 10 grand a head, and Del Rio is different. And by last weekend, just a week after they were freed from Tapachula, which was where they were being held in the border camp, thousands had now camped out under the Del Rio International Bridge, overwhelming the city of just 35,000 people. So they started dumping all of their ID cards, their Chilean and Brazilian ID cards. Because if they can get to the border and they don't have an ID, I'm from Haiti. I'm not from Chile. You can't send me back to Chile. Slight problem. When the Biden administration starts now flying them back to Haiti, now all of a sudden, the Haitians are down there and they're like, whoa. I'm not going back to Haiti. So now they're either going to have to go back out to the field or wherever they ditched their ID card, try to find that thing, or they're doing what a lot of these folks are now doing, which is hightailing it back down to Chile and Brazil. That's what's happening. And then, you've got the clearing out operations as well going on. So Bensman, again, from the Center for Immigration Studies, he said many of the Haitians claim Mexico had turned a blind eye to their movements after months of penning them up on the southern border. Most of the migrants traveled from Tapachula province, where they had been trapped by roadblocks manned by the National Guard, the Mexican National Guard, and they had been forced to comply with onerous immigration rules that include getting their papers stamped every 2 days. The rules were introduced under the Trump administration, sparking riots among the Haitian and African migrants trapped there. Biden had asked Mexico to keep the measures in place. Isn't that amazing? Biden asked Mexico to keep these measures in place against the Haitians and the Africans. Why would he do that? That seems like a disparate treatment, a disparate outcome, don't you think? Seems like it to me. And again, due to my anti-racism training, I know that any disparate treatment is proof of a systemically racist mind or system. So Joe Biden, racist. The DHS chief is pushing back on the claim that whips were used. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas denied Monday that Border Patrol agents used whips to prevent Haitian migrants from crossing the Rio Grande, but it didn't stop them actually from firing all the horses. All the horses now out of work on the border. They're not going to be allowed to use horses on the border any longer. Which, when I read the headline on that story, I thought, first thing was, did they catch the horses wearing Obama masks? Because the last time there was cowboy adjacent Obama mask wearing, like a rodeo. Remember, some guy got fired. The first thing I thought was, wow, firing all the horses, probably wearing Obama masks. Man, there's only 6 days left of September. It's crazy. It is true. My dad told me a long time ago that when you get older, you start measuring time differently. Yeah, when you're younger, a second, a minute, an hour, these things are larger chunks of time to you. And as you get older, it's you measure time in weeks and then months and then seasons and then years. Man. And it makes sense, too, if you think about it, because, the amount of time that you've been on the planet, as you get older, it's this really large chunk of time. And so by comparison, relatively speaking, an hour is not that big of a unit of that larger period. But when you're a kid, you've only been around for 5-10 years or whatever. An hour is forever because it's such a big chunk of your life. Anyway, I digress. I brought all of this up simply because September is Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month. And so next week, right, the 30th, is going to be the second annual WBT Little Heroes Blood Drive. And We're going to be at the Community Matters Cafe from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The One Blood Big Red Bus is going to be at the Community Matters Cafe with us. And, well, truth be told, they're the ones that are going to be doing the blood draws, not us. But, you're going to be there. You're going to be helping fight childhood cancers. And if you want to stop into the Community Matters Cafe, get a bite to eat, a cup of coffee or something, then you're going to support the life-changing work that the Charlotte Rescue Mission does there. And they've got limited edition Little Heroes t-shirts. Not that you donate blood and platelets for the t-shirt, but, it's a little something for the effort, $20 e-gift card as well, and a $10 donation goes back to the Isabella Santos Foundation. So, love to see you out there September 30th. It's a Thursday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Go to wbt.com/events for all of the details. Let me shift gears now and get to the topic that I was going to talk about last hour, but I got distracted, as I tend to do. Piece by William A. Jacobson. You may know him as the creator of legalinsurrection.com. And where is he a professor? I forget. He's a professor of some kind. And not to be confused with Instapundit, that's Glenn Reynolds. But I think William Jacobson's also a professor. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is, legalinsurrection.com, he's got a big write-up. Hillary Clinton operatives perpetrated a massive Russia collusion fraud on the American public, which not only manipulated the 2016 election process, but also froze the Trump presidency and nearly paralyzed the nation politically for years. If you are if you are in the media, or you're a Democrat, but I repeat myself, but if you're in either of those two camps, I urge you to reassess what happened and how it happened and why it happened surrounding the whole Russia collusion story. And if you want to understand why Trump supporters in general, or specifically I should say, and then a lot of conservatives and Republicans, right-leaning people, are so angry at the media, why we don't care what you have to really say anymore, we don't believe you, we see you as activists with bylines. This is like case study number one for you. Okay? Go and read legalinsurrection.com. You can read the piece that I've got here from Andrew McCarthy, National Review. You can read thegrayzone.com, a piece by Aaron Mate. And, those three. And that should give you a starting point to understand the level of animosity and where it comes from. Rightfully so, by the way. Rightfully so. Folks on the right are justifiably angry at the media and the Democrats for what they have put America through for the last 5 years. And I understand you hate Trump. I get it. Like, I understand that. But you have to be able to set that aside. It's one of the things I've never really understood about people who make everything about Donald Trump. When they hate him so much, like, why do you give the guy that kind of power over you? If you hate him so much, why do you let him dictate your response and your thoughts about virtually everything? Like, he's sending out press releases or something because he can't tweet anymore, right? Because they banned him off of the platform. It's pretty easy to ignore Donald Trump right now. And if you still can't do it, you're the one with the problem, right? That's a you issue. That's not a Donald Trump issue. That's a you problem. So Hillary Clinton and her operatives, they concocted a scheme. And this is what we learned to be the Russia collusion, now we know, fraud. And by the way, I wasn't on the air at WBT at the time all of this was going on, so I will let you know that at the very beginning, I was one who said we need to have an investigation because it is very concerning and the nature of the charges were very, very serious. And Donald Trump was not particularly adept at shutting down the charges. And he had people in his orbit that were connected to some pretty unsavory Russian types and Russian connected people. So there was Paul Manafort, for example, right? There were there were connections there that were like, okay, I don't like this at all. I don't like this. There were people, journalists, that were doing supposedly serious work, that were informed supposedly by legit sources. The longer it went on, though, so I was one who was saying we need an investigation. But the longer it went on, and the less proof and evidence that was ever produced, the more and more skeptical I became. And then I was persuaded to believe what I now believe, which is that this was, in fact, an Oppo research hit job. And it was laundered through mainstream legacy corporate media outlets and the people who work for them because they wanted it to be true. And the people who use them to launder this knew that. They knew that these people working in media were their allies. They knew they hated Donald Trump, and they knew they wanted to be the next Woodward and Bernstein, and so they wanted to take out the sitting president, and so they fed that. And initially it was the candidate, Donald Trump, because everybody was working against him. They didn't want him elected. That's the way it looks now, and that's what the evidence points to. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It is Friday, it's 1:30, and that means we talk to Becky Gray. She is the Senior Vice President of the John Locke Foundation. You can read her work and her quotations in carolinajournal.com. Becky, how are you? Happy Friday.
Great, Pete. Happy Friday to you.
I have to admit, I'm not seeing a lot of stuff moving through the state legislature this week either. I know last week was very, very slow. This week seemed kind of slow too.
You know, it is, and we're at that point where the final negotiations of the budget are taking place. A lot of these meetings are between committee chairs. They're between some legislative meetings, although that's been rather slow, but they're behind closed doors. We're also seeing and hearing that there are some negotiations and conversations with the governor's office. So as they work out these details in the final budget, which is a $25.7 billion spending plan. So, you know, Pete, we're talking about a lot of money. That's where we are. So it seems very quiet. It's kind of eerily quiet at the building all week, but what I understand is that there is a lot going on, a lot of negotiations. We're hearing that next week is also going to be slow, maybe have a vote out of the General Assembly the following week. And then, again, what we're hearing is the governor is included in these negotiations and these conversations at this point. But then, of course, when they pass the budget, it will go over to the governor's office, and he will make a decision on what he's going to do. So, yeah, it's quiet, but it doesn't mean that there's not stuff going on.
Yeah, well, it's like the scene from the movie where they say, oh, it's quiet. It's too quiet. Yeah, stuff's happening.
Yes, right. And I have been down at the building, and you do get that feeling that it's almost a little bit too quiet.
That someone's about to get murdered by somebody with an axe or something.
Or somebody's getting ready to spend a bunch of your money, which is really what's happening.
So one of the things that I saw moving on social media, on Twitter, where all of a sudden, there's some renewed interest in Medicaid expansion. Like they think that this might actually now happen. It's on the table, so they say.
Yeah, you know, again, the eerily quiet, and then you start hearing things like that, and you wish they would go back to just being completely quiet again. But, you know, the Medicaid expansion has been one of the things that the governor has actually drawn the line in the sand with previous budgets. That, you know, it is no secret to anyone that's paying attention that the governor really wants Medicaid expansion. Will that be part of the negotiations with the General Assembly? Maybe. I'm kind of hearing the same thing. I don't know any more than, Pete, what you've mentioned on social media. North Carolina has held fast in not expanding Medicaid. I think that's the right decision, particularly as we're still working to transition our Medicaid program into a new format, a new way of delivery. We want to make sure that program is stable before we throw another 600,000 people onto Medicaid. But we are hearing that. I hope that's not true. I don't think that's the right decision for North Carolina right now. Again, to put 600,000 additional people on Medicaid when 20% of our population is already on Medicaid. Pete, over half the babies born in North Carolina are born under Medicaid. This is a huge, massive program already. Let's make sure that that program is serving the people that need those services in the most appropriate way, in the most cost-effective way, before we start putting large populations of childless, able-bodied, working-age adults onto this entitlement program.
Yeah, it is a couple things. Number one, it is sort of the backdoor universal health care measure. That's how it's getting developed. It's obvious, and that was the intent, I think, from the beginning. But the other part is, as you just mentioned there, the population that you're talking about that's eligible for Medicaid under the expansion rules are not the population that Medicaid was originally designed to provide services for, and those folks are actually worth less to the providers for the reimbursements than the new population is. So they've essentially created this perverse incentive to see the any new enrollees first, who are younger, able-bodied, can work, not sick. Like, those folks are going to get scheduled first. They're going to get access first, because a lot of providers have just they've slowed down or not accepting seeing any Medicaid patients because the reimbursements are so low.
Right, yeah. And so, as you mentioned, what that does is it endangers the population that Medicaid was designed for, and that is for poor children, poor pregnant women, the aged, the disabled, the people that are struggling with substance abuse. I mean, I think Medicaid was designed for a population that I think, most people can agree, this is the safety net population that we have a obligation to look after, and it endangers those people. And as you said, what it seems to be is the end game is universal health care, which really came out of Obamacare when that was put into place. Many states have rejected Medicaid expansion. North Carolina is one of those. Part of the problem with this is, or kind of an unknown part of it, is the federal government has offered these huge incentives, huge monetary incentives for states to expand their Medicaid population. I think North Carolina has been more thoughtful and more forward-thinking in really saying, okay, the feds are going to pay for this, but, everybody remember, the feds have no money. So, do we really want to expand a program based on federal funding when the federal government is broke? What's going to happen when that federal money dries up? Or better yet, is this the best long-term plan to ensure health care and to ensure that our most vulnerable populations are taken care of?
Yeah. Well, it also coincided with the takeover that Republicans had at the legislative level, where they now got to fix the problems that existed in that system for so long. It was running such massive deficits. It was blowing, multi-billion-dollar holes in budgets. And when Democrats finally got voted out, Republicans came in and they started working on fixing it just as Obamacare was getting run. And so the GOP said, no, we're going to do our thing. We're not going to get distracted or derailed in our efforts.
Right, exactly. And really put some measures in place for some fiscal accountability, and again, to make sure that money spent is money that meets the intended purpose of making sure that people who need it, have that health care. And, the thing about it is, if the concern is that people cannot afford health insurance because the cost of health care has gone up, what we really ought to be looking at is lowering the cost of health care rather than just saying, well, health care costs so much, we'll just have the government pay for it. We ought to be looking at expanding access to health care through allowing mid-level providers, nurses' aides, nurse practitioners, those kind of folks, allow them broader ability to practice within the scope of what they can do. We ought to be looking at expanding the use of telehealth and telemedicine. We ought to look at removing some of the barriers, like with certificate of need laws. There's a lot of stuff that we can do to lower the cost of health care and not just concede, well, the cost of health care is so expensive we have to have government pay for all of it. Let's look at lowering the cost of health care so that people can afford the kind of health insurance that they need and their families need. That's a better way to approach this problem rather than just going in and saying, well, we'll just expand Medicaid and let the federal government pay for it.
Becky Gray, Senior Vice President of the John Locke Foundation, johnlocke.org. You can read their publication, Carolina Journal, at carolinajournal.com. Becky, we will cut you loose early for the day, and maybe next week it'll be less quiet in Raleigh. We shall see.
We shall see. Yep. In the meantime, keep up with carolinajournal.com to find out what is happening next week in the General Assembly. Pete, have a great weekend. I look forward to talking to you next week.
Same here. Thanks, Becky. I appreciate it. I apparently touched a nerve with producer Ryan. Which is easy to do? Is that what you just said? Apparently that's easy to do. Good to know. But I mean, we're still learning. It's a brand new relationship. It's kind of like dating, We're kind of testing the waters here. So apparently, Ryan has opinions about dating in Washington, D.C. And so when a new survey just hit the Twitters that a new report has crowned D.C. as the best city for dating, Ryan, well, he said some stuff that is not FCC appropriate, but you disagree, let's say.
That is trash right there.
That is trash.
That is trash. It's like the GIF or the meme on Twitter where it's like, this is bait. Like that's exactly what that is.
Yeah. From the Thunderdome or whatever.
Correct.
A writer named Ash Short, she says, DC is so bad for dating, I literally shipped someone in from Arizona. So look, I don't know a lot about DC culture, which is an oxymoron, I believe, but I don't know a lot about it, but I have heard that you can't date in DC. It's terrible date. It's a terrible, terrible dating scene in DC.
Correct. I went on one day. I worked in D.C. for 4 years and went on one date in D.C., and I will never do it again. You couldn't pay me to date in D.C.
Well, that would be quite a trek from here, obviously, so someone would have to pay you if you were going to go on a date in D.C.
Yeah, just take the train up. Just take the Amtrak train up.
You do realize we're in North Carolina. We don't really have trains like you guys had up there in D.C. You realize that, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, there is a train. You can take it.
Yes.
Yeah. But it takes forever.
I know.
Yeah.
Like every other form of transportation up north.
It's terrible. I looked into it like 20 years ago because I used to be able to make the drive from Rock Hill to Long Island in 11 and a half hours, which I drive fast. I drive fast.
Yeah, I was going to say same here. I've had three in the 4 years I've been down here in North Carolina. I've had 3 tickets, all in Virginia. By speeding through Virginia. Remember, kids, don't speed in Virginia.
Right. Virginia is awful for many reasons. But that's okay. So you've got this 11 and a half hour trip that by the time I was like, this is so stupid, it had now turned into like 14. I was like, I can't do this anymore. So then I went to fly, and the first trip I made, and I got snowed in, and it took like 16 hours. I said, okay, I got to drive again. Found a different route. But even that's now gotten so bad. But
vicious circle we got going.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's now coming around to the same thing. It's like, I don't understand. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm too far afield. The point here is that even I know that dating in Washington, D.C. is terrible. At least I thought so. But in one of these stupid lists that they put together in order to get me to mention who did the list, apartmentlist.com, then they have come up with some sort of a ranking system that is obviously not accurate because they put D.C. at number 1, and then they put Boston as number 2, which, like, that can't be true at all because I thought the biggest challenge to dating in Boston was Bostonians. Like, I thought that was the biggest problem.
Elephant in the room.
Right. Like, oh, my God, I'm in Boston, and there are Bostonians here. Ugh. Like, who wants to date in Boston? I kid, Boston. I kid. Not really.
Not really.
Atlanta, number 3. Now, I have heard that about Atlanta, though. A lot of dating in Atlanta.
I've heard that as well.
Yeah. You've heard that there's a lot of dating in Atlanta?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No, I've heard a lot of success stories with Atlanta dating.
Oh, that's true. They have the housewives, and you can't be the housewives of Atlanta without dating. There you go. It's
chicken and the egg thing there.
Right, it's science. And then Minneapolis. How is this possible? Minneapolis? How do you even go out of your apartment for like 6 months out of the year? It's so cold up there. Like, it's so cold, they literally built malls like higher than the snow line, right? Like, I don't get it.
Everyone's dating in the Mall of America.
Maybe so.
And I guess maybe it's so cold that like you have to bundle up together and get all comfy.
But that's
cozy.
No. You're skipping ahead. This is simply just go. You got to be able to secure the dates.
I know, but it still moves ahead the levels of intimacy.
Right. We need to look at what is the criteria here, because I got questions. Like,
there are a lot of questions.
Like, how are you judging a successful or a good, quote unquote, good dating scene? Does that just mean you get to go on lots of dates? Because at some point, a lot of dates starts to be a negative.
Right.
You want to have enough dates so you can find the mate.
The partner. Right.
That's the point, right? Unless, of course, you're saying, no, this is all just for the hookups and all that, like confirmed bachelor here, never getting married. So that would seem to me to be kind of a patriarchal kind of a survey.
But here's the whole thing, though. Like, what about the whole thing about like you're supposed to date your spouse for the rest of their lives or whatever? Like, is that criteria here, or is it just the newlywed or like the introductory dating phase?
Okay, yeah, I don't know who you're talking to about that thing that you just said, but it's not that.
Okay.
All right. Let me see here. East Coast reigns supreme. I'll give you the top 10 here. But okay, here we go. Our report is based on 4 key metrics. These are the key metrics, they say.
All right, I'm writing these down.
Dating satisfaction.
Okay.
Social satisfaction.
Okay.
Dating affordability.
That one's important.
Percentage of singles. So it makes sense if you have a lot more singles in a place. But now I don't know. That seems to me like you could have some communities down in Florida that would rank very highly on the percentage of singles. They would all be 65 and older, but...
So based on those top 4 cities, I mean, all those are very high populated.
Yeah, and the Villages is going to be rocking. I'm just saying. News is next. Stay tuned. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT.